I want to be able to get to some hip, but if there's a boundary, I'm going to drape to the boundary. I don't believe in the diaper draping. I don't believe in the butt floss draping. If you drape conservative, as long as you don't go under your drape, I'm fine. So I get the oil in my hands and I start on the leg. And now that routine did not show hamstrings or calves. So you can get in there. You want to make sure you're using firm strokes. The bigger muscles, you can use the fist, the finger, the knuckles on your hand, the flat of the top of your hand, and get right in there. You want to stay stacked. So you don't want to be leaning too far forward or too far back. Stack your joints, gives you more power. Get into a lunge. Jeez, I may. Oh yeah, she's a moaner too, just so you all know. If you find a trigger point, that's when you want to downsize. The smaller surface area you use on the body, the more finite the work. So if she had a trigger point in here, I would probably use my knuckle and get in there with my knuckle and apply static pressure, and then I would move on because it's painful. And then I would go back. You're better off, in my opinion, to trigger for a bit till you start to get tired or you start feeling her get fatigued, move on and go back. You could always go back. So basically my deep tissue and neuro is just this. So if you could see what I've done with my thumb and hand, I'm doing hand over hand. This is keeping my thumb at a safe angle and it's giving me more pressure. So I'm using my thumb because she's very tiny. My hand is bigger than her lower leg. So I'm using my thumb, and by doing hand over hand, I'm getting pressure here. I'm supporting my thumb and I'm going. Okay, so always use hand over hand. If you find that you're doing this, I don't want to see wrists like this. If you're doing this, then it's hand over hand and keep those fingers down. Okay, if you start doing this, you're going to hurt your flexors, extensors in your arm. Okay, now she's got a trigger right here. Nice big one. Right at the hamstring attachments, you'll see a lot of that, especially in people who are super active.
Okay.
What the? I almost like.
She cursed at me in her language. So the guy on the video was showing how to do the abduction and adduction. And in the final, do not put your oil on the floor like I just did. Do as I say, not as I do.
This is probably a silly question, but how are you able to feel the trigger with your knuckles?
Because you can feel it, it's tight. So as you're working the muscles...
tightness, it's not a bump or anything?
Sometimes. It feels different than the softer part of the muscle. So one of the things he did was to do the adduction, abduction. I usually don't drape like this, but I'm in my own office. I make sure that they're covered. So what he did was he found the hip right here. I use my knuckles right in the hip and I push the leg over. And you can feel the head of the femur in there. And you can feel it moving.
And that's the piriformis.
That's the piriformis stretch. Now remember, the sacrum is here, the glute medius, glute minimus, piriformis, and the other muscles, they all come here to the hip. So if the piriformis is tight and you're working this middle and you can't get it out or it's too painful, start working down here at the hip. Loosen it here. Does that hurt?
Yeah, that's tense there. That's a tense muscle.
So she's good for illustrations. So I would work the whole leg. So from here to here, do the foot if she wanted her feet done. Then I would do the same on this leg. Then I would go to this glute and hip. So what I would do on this, I'm going to do here. Now, she has her barrier. I usually work over the sheet unless someone has a really big issue that they need more. So piriformis is smack in the middle. Right there is piriformis. Super easy, always in the middle. So to answer your question, I always work on it and I do some deep strokes. And if she's got a tight spot, then I'm going to trigger. But I don't trigger every little part. So she's got a tight muscle right here. And I'm also triggering the hip socket at the same time.
How are you triggering the hip socket?
I've got my thumbs in there.
It's in there.
How are we gonna do that?
So something else you can do is you can get your elbow right in there
I'm just gonna lay. I'm just gonna be
and just,
acting him out, right?
yes.
Okay. I've learned my lesson.
But if you stack yourself, it's not going to hurt. I have tendinosis and stuff in this elbow, and I've been getting treated for flexor extensor issues, and this isn't bothering me at all. Because I'm stacked. Shoulder, elbow, stacked. I'm standing in a lunge, and I have my hand. I'm actually putting more weight on this hand as well, and I'm letting my body do the weight of this. Now, if I did this too long, my shoulder would jam. So you do this on both sides. Whatever you do to one side, do to the other, because body's equal. The other thing is that the body will learn from itself. So if you trigger one side and you're not getting anywhere, work the other side, because the body will learn side to side. So once the other side loosens up, if you come back, this will start to loosen. So that's, and also keeping the body in balance, okay? So after I've done all my glute work, which is part of my favorite, that's when I go to the back, and I'm going to be right in front of you guys here, sorry. So again, to drape, find the lower back, put your hand here, bring your sheet down. Those of you who have had Swedish, you know this already, and that gives you a good clean line. Now, she has undergarment on. I would say to her, do you mind if I tuck this in? This way, if they're wearing something higher, you can kind of push it down a little bit so you can get more. Okay, because that's a boundary. You don't go under it, you don't cross it. This way, when you tuck this in, you're not tempted to go underneath. And that's when I'll expose a little bit more of the hip on either side. I do like this oil.
It's nice, ain't it?
Oh, I'll be high. No, I'm kidding.
I wish it worked like that.
I wish too.
So oil in your hands. Put it this way, when I take my hands off her, I don't want this. So you start with your Swedish strokes to spread the oil, and as you're doing it, you're feeling for any tightness. So my next step, I gotta tuck you in again, sorry. My next step is to do the next part of, I've done the glutes, I wanna do the sacrum. But I've got to get this oil on there. So I'm going to do some QL right here. I'm going to come down and try and get those, the iliolumbar ligaments where they sit. There's the two little dimples here in the back. And I'm pushing down on the sacrum. And what I'm doing is I'm pushing side to side. I want to make sure she's got wiggle in her butt. That means her hips are moving. If she's stuck, if you go to push and it doesn't move, then you need to loosen the glute and the QL a little bit more to get that butt to move. Wiggle when you walk. You need to have the wiggle wiggle. Another thing I like to do is when I'm doing it after I've loosened up some of the low back, I'll put my hand right here where the sacrum is and gently put some traction on the spine, just with one hand. And then the QL, remember, it goes down here to the hip. And those strokes that you learned, the more I can combine, I do. The more strokes I can put into one. So that broke it up in the upper back and the lower. Just do it all at once. Okay, so also, I'm going to walk in front of you guys again, sorry. The QL stretch, which everyone seems to like. One hand, now the hand closest to the head goes on the hip, right on the hip. The other one, either over or under, however it works, like this. You want to push down and push this way. So your hands go opposite. So get yourself right here, push down, push the hip down and push this other hand. You can go all the way up to the neck. It gives a nice stretch. How's that feel? Really nice. And then I'll work from down here. I'll work on the back and go all the way up. Now I do some neck work up here. I call it wringing the neck. I get my hands here and I just grab and pull. like you're wringing the neck. Okay? Shoulder work, that stroke going around the shoulder. If you think of the shoulder blade, smack dab in the middle is 99% of the time a trigger point. So you find the shoulder, get right in the middle, and you're going to find something.
Yeah, she
Affected her.
Now, if you see that, and you hear that, it's a little bit too much. But it's usually, this is a bit,
But she said it feels good, so you
Yeah,
continue.
right.
good.
But if you see that, you back off a little bit, and then when she says, oh, that feels good, then you go for more.
Okay,
Okay?
that's the cue.
So if you see that, then you know you're too deep, and if you hear the, oh shit, then you know that was mild. I've been sworn at harder than that before. But see how I'm rolling? That's a tight muscle and a trigger right here in the middle of the shoulder. So another way you can get it is, no charge for that. You can pop up the shoulder blade. And she's sweating. So there are some signs that this might be too much, even though her head is saying, oh, that's great. Her body's saying, back off. So you can also get under the shoulder blade this way. What I do is I put my hand on the front of the shoulder, and I can pop up the shoulder and get right under here. You can bring your arm down if you'd like. Sorry, this way. And if you get your thumb under the shoulder blade here, you're getting those rotators underneath. And you can also take her hand off the table.
Keep breathing, Simon.
I'm running out of space.
Sorry.